Welcome, everyone, to Wired Word Live. This is a live broadcast of the Wired Word Bible study every Monday at 1 o'clock. Do be mindful, those that are joining us online, and you can comment on the Facebook feed or on the YouTube feed and stuff, and we will be happy to bring your comments into our discussion, and you can participate in this Bible study by giving your input and asking questions and stuff for us to discuss. With us today for the live broadcast, we have Pastor Eric, and we have Deb, and we have Liz joining us from out of state, and we have Miss Carol Dowell. Welcome, everybody, to the broadcast.
Hello.
Hello.
All right. Today, the Wired Word Live and stuff, our topic is physically distant astronauts return from space to a new reality of social distancing. So let's go ahead and open up with prayer. I believe Miss Deb is going to help us with that.
All right, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the ability to gather together in new ways and be able to have discussions and learn new things about our new reality at this point. We ask that you be with us and help us to guide the discussion so that we honor you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. The basis of today's discussion comes from the Wired Word. And I'm going to go ahead and read the in the news portion of it, and then we will get into the questions for discussion. So in the news, NASA astronauts Andrew Morgan and Jessica Meir and Russian cosmonaut Oleg Skripnik, I think, landed their spacecraft in a remote area in rural Kazakhstan on Friday, April 17th, exactly 50 years after another crew splashed down in the Pacific. Their lunar landing mission aborted due to equipment malfunction. 50 years ago, a crisis in space ended in the safe return of the Apollo 13 crew, flight surgeon Morgan wrote on Twitter. Now, during the return of the Soyuz MS-15 crew, the crisis is on Earth. When you look down on Earth and see Earth without borders, you see that problems often face us all without borders as well, he remarked. There are many problems that affect us all globally, regardless of the country we are from, and COVID-19 is just one. Flight engineer Meir found it hard to reconcile the beautiful image of Earth as she saw from space with the news of devastation and disruption caused by the coronavirus. It's quite surreal to see it unfolding on Earth below, Meir said a week before returning to Earth. The Earth looks just stunning from up here, as it looked several months ago. So it's difficult to believe that all the changes that have taken place. But now it looks like we're going back to a completely different planet. We expect that Earth changes when we go away for a month. Just like when you deploy, you expect that some things are going to change, said Colonel Morgan, who is also an emergency physician with the U.S. Army. I don't know that I expected things would change quite so much, he added. I didn't think I was going to come back to a country that has more or less closed down. Meir said she was looking forward to experiencing nature, just feeling the fresh air, the warmth of the sunlight on your skin, the smell of the trees in the forest, and embracing people she loves. Morgan echoed her when he commented that being away from my family for 9 months has been the toughest challenge of my mission. But both would have to wait a little longer to be reunited with family and friends, however, because the rigors of spaceflight can result in compromising the astronauts' immune system. The quarantine period after their return home is stricter this time around, out of abundance of caution to keep them safe from COVID-19. NPR host Steve Inskeep called the astronauts' experience in space the ultimate quarantine, since the Americans had spent more than half a year in extreme isolation 250 miles from Earth. But Meir said they trained for that and are kept busy with exciting activities on board the International Space Station. whereas they were not prepared for extended isolation once they returned home. Russian cosmonaut Anatoly Ivanshin, I'm probably slaughtering these names, and Ivan Wagner and American Christopher Cassidy assumed control on board the International Space Station from Morgan, Mir, and Skripka after spending about 6 weeks in isolation to ensure they didn't bring the coronavirus into space. That meant they couldn't say goodbye to their families in person when they landed or when they launched into space. This mission does feel different. I will tell you, leaving Earth amidst the global crisis and the shutdown worldwide quarantine, Cassidy said, "We knew as a crew we were going to be in quarantine, but we didn't know the whole rest of the world was going to join us." 2 people were suddenly thrust from one form of isolation to another, where Alina Manghetti and her partner Ryan Osborne of Manchester, England, they had just begun to fulfill their dream of sailing around the world in their yacht this spring. Having instructed family and friends not to send them any bad news, the 2 were unaware of the seriousness of COVID-19 outbreak until they tried to make landfall in the Caribbean after 25 days in the Atlantic. According to Osborne, that's when they learned that the whole world had been infected. Now they were unable to resume their trip until travel restrictions are lifted, when they hope they will occur before June hurricane season begins. Others who have spent significant time in isolation offer their insight on effective coping mechanisms. Peggy Whitson, the first woman to command the International Space Station, spent 665 days in space during multiple missions, including 2 6-month tours of duty. COVID-19 gives us higher purpose, much like being in space does, because we are saving lives by quarantining. Whitson said, "It is important to understand that bigger purpose and to embrace that purpose to give you a reason to rationale for continuing to put up with the situation." Former U.S. Navy officer John Rafferty said he coped with long periods of isolation on board a submarine by conversing with others, which helped him take the attention away from himself and to hear that we're all struggling with similar things. He also made lists of plans for what he would do after the tour was over, which gave him hope for the future. More on this story can be found at some additional links that we can provide on the feed later. Applying this news story for our discussion, when our reality changes drastically, as the astronauts and sailors found the world had been transformed with the onset of the pandemic, we may contemplate what, if anything, we can rely upon. We recall the words of the hymn, "On Christ, the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand." So to start off, our first big question of the day: since the outbreak of COVID-19, what new insights, if any, have you discovered about yourself, the world, or about God and the way God works in the world?
There is no buzzers, just speak up.
I think one of the most important things that I've learned. Go ahead, Carol.
I'm sorry.
Nope.
I guess I've been able to, I enjoy things to do by myself, but I realized I like people more than I thought I did. And I like the communication and the face-to-face, and I'm realizing that about myself, I guess.
That's a really good point. I've always said that I don't mind being alone. I work in the office a lot of the times alone. I'm home alone all the time now that my kids are gone. But I have found out that I think I do like people more than I thought I did too, Carol. I'm getting a little lonely. The other thing I found out too is we have so much in social media and on the news and everything. I'm struggling to figure out what to believe and where to look for the correct information and how to fact check things so that I'm not scared all the time. You know, the world doesn't give us good information, that's for sure.
One of the
Yeah,
things go ahead.
You go ahead, Rob.
So one of the things I find with even in this here where it talks about, what I've discovered about God and the way God works in the world, I find it interesting. I know Pastor Eric in a sermon a few months ago in church was talking about, how people say, God makes everything happen or whatever type thing. He has ultimate control, which I don't think he does, but I think he controls how we see things and what we do with them. I think he has a lot to do with that. And I mean, even just the opportunities that we've discovered or found or pursued with being able to, for instance, bring this broadcast out to everybody and to bring our church services more up to date and getting to reach more people. I think that there's good coming from it because of what God does. And I think that some of that has been missed in the past, or we weren't necessarily listening to him as well.
Very true.
Yeah, this is, and like I was making the comment during Lent that, we tend to, during Lent, we all give up stuff for 40 days, something in our lives, something supposed to be something sinful that we do in our lives. We're supposed to get up for 40 days. And I think Deb and I were talking about this morning, how I made that comment and how I was jokingly saying that, apparently we didn't give up enough and God is making us give up more things. And that's what I was kind of telling her, is that a lot of the stuff that, that this whole pandemic, the stay-at-home order has caused us to do is to not eat out at fast food as often as we used to. It's changed a lot of our eating habits and our lifestyles a little bit. So that has definitely changed for us, where we've I don't know, I guess kind of gotten ourselves into more of a healthier lifestyle. But what Lent is supposed to do too, when you take things away from you, is when you have those desires or those wants, we're supposed to go to God in prayer during those times. And that's, I think right now we're seeing a lot more people turning to God because of the fact their lives have changed so drastically, and they want to be able to get out and do things with their friends and family, and people are turning to God and asking for his strength and his guidance during this time. So
I think you see a lot more people, a lot more stories, or at least of people helping people now too. We said that we had availability for people to do things for our people who are unable to go out because they're immune compromised or whatever. And I've maybe had 2 people ask for help, and everyone that I've talked to when I call around during the week says, so-and-so is helping me. This person's helping me do this. This person's helping me do that. And before, we kind of didn't connect with each other as much as we are now.
Yeah, I think for sure that God has kind of saw that the world is tearing itself apart and we need to put ourselves back together. And we don't realize that until we're forced to. Hi, Rachel. And so, like, I feel like one thing that I noticed more since quarantine is, as much as I might not like being around my family all the time, I have missed them a lot more than I thought I would. And like, I feel like I've connected with people because you're forced to be bored and say, hey, how are you? And so we tend to like connect more. And I hope that once this is actually over, that it wasn't for nothing and that we continue to do that.
Good point.
Well, and even having this type of a digital outreach and connection has allowed us to, for instance, bring you into these discussions with us where, we were kind of, I almost want to say, neglecting those, those opportunities that we may have had before. Now we're obviously realizing, hey, these are some resources that we can use to connect to those a little more often, that are a little further away from us, that maybe we don't always connect with the way we should.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Okay. Question number 2. What do you make of Morgan's observation? There are many problems that affect us all globally, regardless of what country we are from. And COVID-19 is just one. What other global problems affect us all, regardless of nationality? And are those problems most effectively addressed on a country-by-country basis, in coordination with the community of nations, or some other way?
Okay. Well, one thing that I have noticed is like hate. That's the first one that comes to my mind every time. Hate is like a big problem everywhere, but we tend to just sweep it under the rug and pretend like it's not there, like it's not as important because it's everywhere. It's human nature, which it shouldn't be normalized. It should be taken care of. But instead of trying to help the people who tend to hate us, we tend to retaliate, which only makes it worse.
And that can be put in any situation, Liz, like even with the people who are protesting the stay at home, and even within the government, if you watch the different things that the government say, there's some we spread some pretty hateful things around this world, don't we?
Yes, for sure.
Anybody else?
Well, one of the things when we talk about, should problems be, addressed country by country or not, worldwide type thing. Obviously, I think we need to be concerned about worldwide stuff, but I think it's in Timothy where it talks about, if a man can't take care of his own house, how is he supposed to take care of, the church or the something greater?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I think of this, I think focus needs to be at the smallest level first to make sure we can take care of, we need to take care of our house so we can take care of our town. We need to take care of our town so we can take care of the state. We need to take care of the state so we can take care of the country. We need to take care of the country so we can help take care of the world. So I think the focus needs to be, when we look at addressing problems, we need to look internally first and then work our way out. I think too often people jump right to the global view of things, and you just can't fix problems on that scale if you don't start down lower and start at the closest denominator first and then work your way out. So I think too often things jump to the global or even the national level when we're not able to take care of things ourselves, so
Rob, I've been noticing that in the fact that we need to feed so many people. I've been able to go on some mission trips to different countries and see and feed people out of a square box of basic food. And that's their daily, life. Now all of a sudden we see it in our own country.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just been amazed at the lines that are forming for basics, and it makes me want to not necessarily not go on any mission trips, but we've got a mission here in our country that we could fill by just making sure everybody's, not going hungry.
I agree wholeheartedly.
I see the Feed America trucks, and this warms my heart to see how many different people are responding to this. And it just makes me wonder, why did I bother to go to Uganda? I mean, not that it wasn't a good trip, but what I'm saying is we've got it right here under our feet. People who are, and there's also things like wars, people disagreeing, people wanting to be with other people, people helping each other. This is human nature. This is the common thread that we have throughout the world, I think.
That kind of
really made.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say that kind of goes back to what Rob said about taking care of ourselves first. I think that, this pandemic has shown us, like you said, Carol, that we have kind of forgotten about our own here in the U.S. and in our area in Newaygo County. Even the schools are feeding the children still. So.
Well, and it's even goes back farther than that, not just our homes, but our own, as I alluded to prior to getting on the broadcast, was taking care of ourselves, the gift that God gave us in our bodies. Because right now, what are we finding out? That our immune system has been compromised. And how many of us really can state that we have a healthy immune system? I know mine's been compromised by age, heart, different things. And I just think that it's going to be very important to take care of that gift that God so graciously has given us to function in a great way to avoid viruses and things. And I don't think it's not to its potential. It just I think we need to focus on that. And I saw some pictures of different cities that before and after the factories were working and stuff, and how the smog was lifted. And I'm going, whoa, how much better can we breathe if we didn't have to, deal with that kind of stuff. Dave and I were in Utah when they had a brown smog going on, and I couldn't believe you feel like you can't breathe. Well, look what happened when half the workers, and I'm not saying not to have them get jobs, but just tone down our capacity of manufacturing and stuff that hurts our systems, our personal body.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, we definitely have to focus, like you said, both the way Rob stated and the way Carol stated it. It starts basically with yourself and working on yourself and then working out from there, because let's face it, you can't help everybody in the world if you yourself aren't capable of taking care of what you're doing, and to make sure that you're healthy enough to be able to do that financially, physically, all of it. It makes it kind of tough to, what's that? Mentally, physically and mentally able to take on that weight of the world. And yeah, there's been many times where I've questioned where we're supposedly sending billions of dollars to different countries to help with hunger, but yet, I got people knocking on our door asking for services here at the church and asking for help, and we tried finding help in our county, and we have no help for these people in our county. So different situations. For their situations, we had nothing to help them, but yet we're sending billions of dollars to other countries to help. And we can't even help everybody who's here that's struggling. So yeah, you kind of wonder, when do you take that step back to make sure your people are being taken care of before trying to save the world?
The next three questions actually have something to do with that kind of stuff. So go ahead, Liz.
Sorry. I was going to say, that's kind of what I said a couple weeks ago when I said something about if we had these resources to help our people all along, why were we not using it? Why were we not using it a long time ago when everyone else needed help? Now all of a sudden it's on a larger scale, and now we can.
Well, and I think you're starting to see, I think part of the reason we're starting to see some of that is they're starting to bring the resources, back local. I think that was the big thing, is that it was all about, well, this country, these people need help, this country, all, it's all been outward, yet where we've got people in our own neighborhoods that are suffering and are having those troubles. And I think now we're starting to see that shift coming back, localizing it and looking at, okay, how do we help our people? And that's, my thought has been in that realm all the time. It's like, we've got to look at, making sure our house is stable, and then we can help other people, and then those people can help other people. And the more you do that, the more it'll end up growing. But if you go right to the global side of things, or even if you're personally thinking at the national level and stuff, if I donate money at a national level, it's not going to have any effect. But if I donate it at a local level, it's going to have a huge impact on somebody. And then hopefully that's going to help them get to the point where then they can look at helping donate local. And then that local just starts growing. And I think you're going to have a greater effect overall. It's going to take some time. Yes. But if, it's like me dropping a penny a day into a coffee cup versus dropping it into a 5-gallon jug, which one's going to fill up faster? And if I fill my coffee mug where it's overflowing, and then that's going to fill other people's mugs, and can help, do the same thing. And it's that trickle up effect, if you want to look at it that way.
The other thing I was thinking about too is I think the playing field has been leveled to the point where it's not shameful to ask for help. And maybe it was before. Maybe you didn't want to, go out and say, I can't feed my family this week. Now it's putting everybody in a different, level of need, or not a different level of need, but at the same need, so that it's not, it's hard to ask for help. And,
if you look at the lines that you were talking about, the lines of cars looking to get food, you're seeing people in Lexuses, Mercedes, Cadillacs that are in those lines lined up to get food. So yeah, it's putting everybody on that equal playing field, basically, kind of.
My concern is, and I brought this up in the West Michigan pastor broadcast on Friday that we did last Friday when we were talking about the need of people. I was looking more at the spiritual and emotional need versus the financial on this. And I actually was one of the questions I asked the pastors about people contacting them because they need help. They need guidance. They need, spiritual, emotional, guidance type thing. And whether people are actually reaching out and asking, because I think there's a lot of people out there that maybe need help in that aspect of things that are not looking for it because they feel that, there's other people that have got to be worse off, and I don't want to bother, their pastor or bother somebody else because, they other people need their help, type thing and stuff. And I think that's, one of the things I brought up there was to get people to understand that, your situation isn't any worse than anybody else's or any better necessarily. So if you need that help and stuff, seek it out, whether it's to just somebody else that you can talk to or confide in, or whether it's contacting, a pastor, with your church or with another church. It doesn't matter if it, to seek that out and not think that, there must be people that are worse off than me, so I don't need it type thing. So, and that could apply back to the financial aspect of things too, really. I mean, don't be too proud if you are struggling, and stuff that, and thinking that people are worse off than you and to pass it off to them.
Yeah, it's difficult for people to realize that something to me that might be major to me may not be to somebody else, but I still might need help to deal with it. I might,
Yeah.
But it's hard.
Well,
especially when you're talking. Go ahead, Karen.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Don't apologize.
I think that somehow that's been stated in somewhere in the New Testament as far as when God gives us things that we have to work through, an illness or a problem, that we come to an understanding about these because of being able then to help someone else. Mm-hmm. And I think of that as far as my depression that I went through and I'm still dealing with. I went through that in order to understand it better so that I can sense or respond to someone else's needs. And I think it goes across the board, whether you're hungry, whether you got a broken leg. I mean, if you see someone that's had something or a problem that's going on in their lives that's similar to what you've had, you can have the empathy then now to hook up with them and help them in a sense. And I think that's where we're starting to gain a connection through all kinds of people, whether it's financial levels or mental health, or it just it levels the playing field.
Absolutely.
We all have little things, like I said, we may not think our issues are big enough to bother somebody else with, but when you start adding up, especially right now when we're all quarantined at home, we have tons of little issues, and those tons of little issues will start adding up and piling up on you. And I'm reminded of a saying that I came across many books ago. It said there's a difference between trials and tests. Trials are when God is trying to get us to learn something about us and about Him for us to be able to work off from. A test is where we learn a little bit about us and how much we need Him. And so right now we're being given a bunch of little tests to learn something about us and how we need Him. And that's, like I said, that's where this is all adding up. And sometimes, you can't figure it out all on your own. a lot of times we're not going to. We need help, and by all means, yeah. Like I said, I can't stress enough. Those of you who are struggling with stuff and you need somebody to call to, and you don't have anybody or can't find anybody, call me. NuegoUMC.com. All my contact information is there.
All right. Let's move on to the next question here. So, question number 3. What positive and negative emotions might stem from the realization that the whole world is in quarantine or isolation together?
Well, the positive thing is you're all in the same boat, so you can't do much. My grandson is a senior this year, and he's commiserating with friends about not being able to do what you do in your senior year, and I think he's blaming a little bit on his dad. Like he feels like he's been given this huge time out. And I said, we're all in the same boat. It kind of makes you feel a little better. I don't know if that's positive or not, but if you put it in perspective of the whole world, you don't feel quite so bad like you've been punished.
Mhm.
It's kind of funny because I've made the comment. I've heard a number of other people make the comment and stuff too. It's like with the gas prices being what they are, I feel like I'm 16 again and grounded and can't go out.
Exactly.
Lizzie's not there yet, so we'll.
I mean, I'm 17 and can't go anywhere, so there's that.
Lizzie knows what we went through now.
Yeah, now you know what. Now you know what we all felt like a number of years ago.
When gas was $1 and we still couldn't go any place.
I don't know if there's any real negative emotions that I've felt because of knowing the whole world is there, other than the frustration of, like I said earlier, not knowing what's the real, what is true about COVID-19 and what is true about the illness. We know it's a bad disease, and we just, because it's new, we don't know anything, and that makes it difficult. But the whole world is in that same boat, like you said, Carol. Nobody knows anything about it, so not even the specialists.
Yeah.
I mean, one negative thing I guess you could say is, I've heard this from a lot of people, and it's not just me, but like, you have too much time to think. And so it just boils over and it gets worse and worse and worse, and there's no controlling it. Even when you go and talk to your therapist or talk to whoever you can, like, it still just feels like it keeps on boiling. And like, that's just one negative thing I can think of. But, it's positive because, like I said earlier, we're getting back together like we should have been a long time ago. But, I mean, it's still no better or no worse because we can still feel alone in our own minds with or without knowing that we are technically together in this.
That leads us right to number 4. What coping skills have you found helpful during this period of increased social distancing?
We're here right now.
Yep.
This
sure.
Definitely these types of things. I think for me, I am, and I know Pastor Eric is a lot like me in this mindset of, we are very much social butterfly type people where we've got to be around people, and being able to do these types of things, the conference calls and stuff, and even this and stuff, it's not the same, but it definitely does help. Being able to have discussions and be able to sit here as a group and talk and do this type of stuff is definitely a help, but it's definitely not the same either. So,
yeah, I had somebody ask me yesterday. They sent me a text or an email, and they said that they asked me how I was doing. They're like, the one thing I never really thought about is, how are you doing in all this? And I said, basically, I'm doing fine because of the fact that I'm keeping myself busy with doing the messages the way we are on Sundays, with doing all the recordings, with now including this podcast and the podcast with the minister group on Fridays. It's keeping me busy and distracted. So it's still allowing me to have that socialization with people. But yeah, it's I'm I can see where you're talking about, Lizzie. We have seen a huge mental health crisis happening during this time. So that's definite negative that's going on, as people are feeling even more secluded than what they felt before when they were in crowds of people. Now all of a sudden you're being told you got to stay home alone. You're basically, it's amping those things up. But yeah, like I said, like Rob said, this right here is definitely helping with my coping skills of dealing with all this, and gives me a chance to still see other people and to interact with them, and it gives me other things to focus on. But
I think one of the things that is helping, I don't know if it's something that's helping me or not, but like Carol and I said earlier, I used to say all the time, I don't mind being alone. I don't mind being alone. I go in my craft room and I do things by myself. But after 6 weeks of not being able to have someone else there, I'm kind of to the point where, my craft room just isn't as appealing anymore. And I don't like to be in there so much by myself as what I did before. And so I have now, started finding ways, mostly video calls and stuff, to get ideas from other people and things like that. And before I would just go in there and do my thing all by myself and be perfectly happy. And so now I'm actually reaching, I guess you could say I didn't have a lot of, I don't know, it's hard to say. I guess I feel like I am making better relationship with friends now than I did before, because before I was like, oh, I can call them or talk to them later. I'm going to go do this. Now I'm like, well, this is all I've got to do. I'm going to go call this person, So I think rebuilding some of those relationships. My kids are grown up and out of the house, and my friends used to be my kids' sports kids' parents, and that's made a difference in my life. And now I'm doing things, albeit online, more with other people. And I think maybe, hopefully, like Lizzie said earlier, that will continue when this is over.
I think it was more having the option on being able to go places and see people that is more annoying to us than anything, is that we don't get that option at this point in time.
Right.
There goes the church phone. We've got a caller.
We'll be right there.
I need to invest in a new device thing, and we can actually take calls and bring live callers into the broadcast. So
Yeah,
you need to take that, Deb. Oh, okay. So
by the way, I just want you all to know that Deb just admitted that when you text her and she doesn't respond you back, she's like, "Oh, I'll just call him later."
Hey, now.
Not anymore, she doesn't.
One of the things based on this here, when we talk about, like Deb, you said you enjoy doing some of the socially isolated, things like crafting and doing things just on your own type thing. I think the fact that you can't do those other things is probably why those things aren't as appealing now. I mean, think about it back when you're a kid and you're grounded. You'd go and hang out in your room for hours on end and just do whatever you wanted and stuff, kind of just on your own. But then when you're grounded and you have to be in there, then it's like, oh, this is horrible. I mean, it's that whole, when you have to do those things, now it's not appealing anymore. So we try to find other things to distract us from that. And I think that's kind of the coping thing, is just finding things to distract you. If it's just calling a friend or doing a video chat thing, or, any of those types of things, it's just something to distract you, which is good, but also is back to the, kind of reaching out to others and maybe doing things you wouldn't normally do.
I was talking to Deb the other day. We were chatting about this, and I said that, I've seen people on Facebook who usually will say, I want to be alone. I want to, people just need to leave. Just, let me be, blah, blah, blah. Now all of a sudden they're complaining that they want people to be, why aren't people calling me? Why aren't people getting with me? I said, it's almost like when you have your car and you're sitting in the house going, yeah, I don't feel like going anywhere right now. But then your car gets put in the garage for some reason because it broke down. And now you don't have a car and you're like, man, if I had a car, I could go everywhere right now. And you're all bent out of shape because of it. So that's kind of the way it is. When we were free to roam whenever we wanted, we really didn't want to, but now that we're being told we can't, it's a mental thing where we're being told we can't. Now we want to go, and we're frustrated that we can't. So yeah, it's like I said, you got to work on that coping mechanism it's a mental game. You're working on that mental aspect of, when you're being told you can versus when you're told you can't.
Carol, we've been kind of dominating the conversation here. What kind of coping skills have you found helpful?
Well, I was just relating it myself to retirement or Michigan winters. We prepare ourselves. When we live in Michigan, you're going to face 3 or 4 months, if you're lucky, and going to have this doldrum time. So you plan for it. You get puzzles and books and all that. And I'm out of puzzles, by the way, in case one send me. But how much have we really prepared for this kind? We haven't. I mean, this is so unusual for everybody that had we been able to prepare, I wonder what people would have done. Just, I would have bought more puzzles, but it's just like going into retirement. If you don't have a good plan, your hours are going to go by and you go, what did I accomplish? Well, I don't know. It just seems like, I think we need to know more about what we need as far as our psyche and our activities. And maybe it's a matter of trying something new, I miss Brenda's ukulele class. I know that. And the painting, the watercoloring class, and church, and wired word in person. But that was pretty much all I was doing. And we actually went to a birthday party yesterday for my daughter-in-law. But my son is, like I told you before, when we told him we were going to go to Georgia for a haircut, he kept us at our distance, big circle outside, everybody 6 feet apart, and warned me if I got too close. But I think this is challenging each of us to think out of the box, think out of what we normally would do. We know ourselves, but maybe we need to know ourselves a little deeper and better, and have another plan, not just resign ourselves to what we've always done. I don't know.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna throw a curveball out here. I'm gonna throw a question that's not on the document here, so I'm sure I'm probably gonna get yelled at by Deb. But I'm gonna throw a curveball into this conversation.
I'm not that mean.
Had you been given 3 months?
Because my battery's running out.
Had you been given 3 months notice that we were going to have to go into a lockdown, what would you have done during those 3 months, or what would you have done differently in order to make it through this quarantine time and stuff? Had you given the notice, what would you have done during that time in order to help you make it through the quarantine process?
I know the first thing I would have done was make my kids move back home.
I'm sure my mom would have done that too.
I probably would have went and grabbed a couple packages of toilet paper before, just to make sure.
I might have moved to Georgia.
You'd have moved to Georgia.
My
get your haircut, right?
My thought
I'd move to South Dakota.
My thought process was partly on, what would you have done during those 3 months, and why didn't you do those things already?
That's a good question.
That's a good question. The other day,
I would have procrastinated until the very last second, and then been like, "Oh, oops."
You mean what you already did?
Spoken like a teenager.
Would you have done something to prepare yourself, prepare your home, and prepare like supplies?
Mentally?
Would you have done stuff to be closer to people and stuff that maybe you were kind of distant from? Would you have, thinking about the mental logic behind, what are we going to do differently going forward, or what should we do differently going forward once this quarantine is lifted, in order to make sure that we're emotionally, mentally, and are physically prepared as far as supplies go for the possibility of this potentially happening again. I'm thinking about those types of things. What are we going to do as far as people goes, our relationships with people? And what are we going to do as far as preparedness, as far as making sure that we're prepared at home for, for that possible thing and stuff? What should we take away from this experience in order to make sure that we're prepared if it ever happened again?
I haven't struggled a lot with food, mostly because my husband and my kids are hunters, so we have freezers full of meat. So I don't need meat. I don't, I have enough. I could give it away if somebody needs it, and I'm willing to if there are people that aren't able to get me to, things like that. But I do worry. I have a son who's immune deficient and asthmatic. My mom has Parkinson's and several other things. My dad is 81 years old today, by the way. Happy birthday, Dad.
Happy birthday.
And and my stepmom has rheumatoid arthritis. So there are a lot of people in my life, and I'm not the healthiest. I'm 5'3" tall and way too heavy, and I don't have a good immune system because I eat unhealthy, and that, Carol's point earlier has made me really, really think in the last hour. I think I need to start with preparing myself, preparing my body to be better able and better equipped for something like this. Because if I don't, and I get COVID-19 or the next new virus that comes out, I'm not super healthy, and
Yeah.
smart Alec Elizabeth there.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Love you.
Deb, it's gotten me thinking about how healthy I really am. I feel like I'm healthy. I get up and I move around, and I'm always glad for that. Thank God for, hitting the floor in the morning with my feet. But I know that my inside, low battery, my insides are not as healthy, and I know I've already got some, things going on. So I really have to, pay attention. And when I've got my iPhone watch that it's every now and then it'll say breathe, and I go, yeah, sure, okay, I guess I was breathing, but maybe I'm not breathing quite, and it's true, we're not breathing deeply, we're not taking in full lung support and then exhaling that bad stuff out, and I think I might even think about starting a class to be healthier, and not necessarily a weight class, but think about your body. What can you do, like breathing, that helps you? And I would just be more, I don't know, healthier. I remember when I was first found out I was going to be a grandma 22 years ago, and I started taking care of the kids, childcare, and after 7 kids, I made it through when they were at their biggest needs as little kids. And I did that because my goal was to stay healthy enough to be able to get down on the floor and get back up again when they, and lift them up when they needed it and stuff. And I want to stay healthy though. I mean, I had a big birthday this year, and it opened my eyes to the fact that my body's not where it should be.
And God did create our bodies to heal themselves, and we have just done so much to them over our lifetime that it's not able to heal itself like God created it to do.
Right.
So in 3 months' time, Rob, I want to be a better, healthier person. Even if I'm still 5'3" and overweight.
Well, I'm not quite 5'3", but I join you on the other part of the club. So
Yep.
So, all right, let's go with the last of the 5 big questions here from our actual article. So back on track. Have you or anyone you know ever lived in a monastery or gone on a silent meditation retreat? What might you learn from such an experience about being alone and in silence? Okay, I'm going to jump right in on this one. Does hunting count?
That's a chosen. Well, this is a chosen thing too. I don't know.
Right. I've went and done a week-long hunt by myself, where I've been out, in the wilderness, in a cabin, and then going back and forth to hunting by myself for 5 days. And I'll tell you, you'll learn a lot about yourself.
I bet.
Lots of high quality thinking time.
Well, even
That
with this,
was before cell phones were even like, reasonable. So
Elizabeth alluded to that earlier. There's so many more people have so much more time to think about things. And, and that's part of why we're seeing child abuse on the rise. We're seeing domestic violence on the rise, suicide on the rise, drug and alcohol use. We've been able to buy alcohol all along, and that the sales of alcohol skyrocketed 5 weeks ago, and that's huge. And because we have gone for so many years not mentally taking care of ourselves. So how do we deal with this? How do we handle it?
and a lot of people losing their outlets, where they get rid of their frustrations and their tensions and stuff through work or working out or the gym or any of those types of things and stuff. So now they're letting them build up until they're out of control.
Yeah, for me, usually it's just sports at the moment. But I mean, all of my track and stuff got canceled, and what was it? It wasn't speech and debate got the rest of the season was just like awards, I think, but it was canceled. And so now I'm like sitting here and I'm like, music. That's all I got.
Yeah, I've been playing my piano and guitar more than I ever did before, so maybe that's a good thing.
I know I kind of wish I would have taken Pastor Eric's lead in giving up social media for Lent and stuff, because I think a lot of people need to do that. I think that's one of the big issues right now is I think this whole meditation or silence. I almost think that a lot of people could use with a bit of disconnect. Because while we're disconnected from people in person, we're way over connected with social media, where there's a plethora of experts out there that I think are giving a ton of misinformation out there. And I think everybody's just, like Deb said earlier when we first started, was you don't know what to believe or what not, and there's so many things out there where people are plastering their personal opinions out there on what they believe is what, and of course everybody else starts believing that that's truly what what is to be believed. That's, I don't know, man, there's just so much frustration to me with people trying to impose their opinion on everybody else and force people to believe what they believe type thing, or they're trying to. And man, I love the mute for 30-day button on Facebook and stuff. I use that a fair amount just because it's like
I've had to use that too. And that goes back to this question, Rob. What might we learn from a silent meditation retreat? We can live without the social media. We can, we could go back to playing I used to play Racco with my grandma all the time. I'm looking for an old Racco game if anybody has one. I want to take it to my camper, but we could learn.
You can't have mine.
we can live without the phone and the social distancing and not the social distancing, the social media and all of that kind of stuff, just like we used to. And I know that for this weekend, I had a great weekend because I was at my camper and I was painting my deck, and I didn't have the time to be on social media and listen to all the media stuff and all the daily updates from all the different leadership people and things like that. I know there's a serious virus. I know that there's bad things happening. And I know that I need to stay away from people to protect people, but I didn't hear all the bad. And I had a much better weekend. So I think we could learn that, we don't really need all that crazy social media stuff. Am I going to choose not to be on it completely? Probably not, because I'm just not that willpowered yet. But hey, I gave up Diet Pepsi for Lent. Maybe I can give up social media soon.
Well, that's, and I mean, since my dad moved down to Florida, and I've stopped going up to the UP to go hunting and stuff. We'd go up there for usually 10 days. And I mean, cellular signal is next to nothing up there. I mean, it's, and that was part of our camp policy and stuff too, was that, your phones are shut off, man. You just don't, you don't, for the longest time, you could never, and most people actually, we never told people when you could start to actually get signal at our cabin and stuff, but you used to have to drive out to the road to get signal. And we just told everybody, hey, we don't have signal up there, don't even, and just, I mean, everything got shut off. And for 10 days, we were basically completely disconnect. So, and I actually miss that. I miss having that break, and I need to get to where we, I do that again and stuff. And that's, probably something going to be coming pretty soon, where I'm just going to kind of disconnect for a week or something like that, and just, and get away from the bulk of it. At least, I still want to be able to do things like this, but to just, otherwise it's just shut off, and I'm not even going to be on it because it's just gets frustrating.
Yeah. We did a, I'm sorry, go ahead, Lizzie.
Like, the main thing I use social media for is just to stay connected to all my friends, especially at the moment. But, like, the ones in Michigan, like, I don't have their numbers because some of them don't have numbers. They just have social media. So that's how I stay connected to them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I could give it up, but that's a lot harder. Because then I practically feel like I just gave up my friend, and that's just, it's not happening.
There is a lot of people who, when I went off on Facebook for Lent, that I have a lot of family and friends that I was missing that of finding out what's going on in their lives. I've been, I know somebody went off to Florida for a while, and when they came back, did they come back? Are they back yet? I didn't know that until I got back on social media, until I got back on Facebook. But when I was going through the candidacy process, we actually had at the candidacy summit, there was a night where they made us basically sit in silence that entire night. No talking, no cell phone, no nothing. So you sat in your room by yourself, and you weren't supposed to say a word until the next morning, until the next day after we ate. You're supposed to go to breakfast, eat breakfast in silence. And then basically when we sat down for worship that morning is when, after that, we were able to talk. But just being that whole entire night, just sitting and thinking and going, man, I wish I could write somebody. But then I started basically kind of finding God's voice mainly. It helped me. And I do that quite often. Same thing as you said, Rob. I sit in the woods. When I'm sitting in the woods deer hunting or something of that nature, I use those quiet moments where I have nothing else to just kind of ease my mind and focus on my thoughts. Because on Facebook, yes, you were right, it's loaded with misinformation. And then also, I read one yesterday that just made me laugh because it's like 900% true. It's like, yeah, I'm just going to jump on Facebook real quick to see what's going on. Oh, great. I'm in an argument. So, and that's basically what it's like. And I laugh at that because of the fact that just a friend of mine asked a simple question, and I gave him a factual answer to that question. And all of a sudden it was like I was being ridiculed for giving facts, for giving the truthful facts. So it was like, oh, wait a minute. Okay.
Well, it seems like more and more nowadays that the truth only matters if it agrees with what they believe.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
like I said, it's my opinion, and you need to have my opinion.
Yeah.
So, and how am I going to force my opinion on you?
and I think that's where the disconnect from social media is probably needed by a lot of people, is to get back and to reality and stuff, and not be so. I think that's with everybody being home and stuff too, I think it's driving more and more of that, where people are so ingrained into the social media aspect of things that they're basing opinions based upon what other people say, whether they're fact or not, and not actually going through and looking at the facts and making their own determinations and decisions based on what actually is out there. But we're getting to the end of the hour here, so this has been a very good discussion. I think we got a lot of information out there, and hopefully everybody that's watching online enjoys this. Be mindful that we do have this broadcast every Monday at 1:00, and if you would like to be a guest on here, you can contact myself or Pastor Eric or Deb, and we'll be happy to get you the information and get you in so you can be part of the discussion. And again, we welcome the comments and questions through the Facebook feed and YouTube. And we do have, just so you guys are aware, everybody that's watching this, we do have a new live video broadcast going out every Friday at 1 o'clock. West Michigan Pastors is what it's called. And we bring in a number of different pastors from the area to discuss current topics as well. Same thing there as far as the comments, questions. And if you are a pastor and interested in joining us in one of those, same thing, get a hold of Pastor Eric or myself and we'll get you involved. I want to thank everybody for joining us, Pastor Eric and Deb and Carol Dow, as well as Liz. We're very happy to have you guys on board with us. And we're going to go ahead and close out with a prayer. Carol, would you like to lead us in that prayer? She might be having battery issues. I think we're losing Carol. So I'll go ahead and close us out in prayer. So
A lot of static.
thank you, God, for bringing us together and giving us this opportunity to have a discussion on your behalf and leading us in that. And oh God, unite our spirits by your Spirit. Give us sympathy and love for one another. Tend hearts and humble minds. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this broadcast. Have a great evening.